Hi, my name is Shawn Priggel. I've been a member here at Immaculate Conception for 8 or 9 years now. I usually help out with music at the 11:30 Mass, play the organ and piano when there was an 11:30 Mass, and sing with the choir there. So I have to admit, when choosing today to give a reflection, I hadn't actually looked ahead at the readings, but there was a note on the sign-up list that said the O antiphons start today. So I thought, great, there's a lot that can be said about the O antiphons, so I'll start there. But when looking at the readings, I actually feel rather strangely compelled to speak a little bit about today's gospel. Today's gospel is from Matthew, and it's the genealogy of Jesus. So it's this really long list of these really odd-sounding names, which I generally let go in one ear and out the other. Tend not to give much of a second thought to. But this year maybe I need to challenge myself to think about why do we hear this each year. A number of years ago, I worked with my dad's sister on our family tree. It was a really fun project, visiting cemeteries and churches and going through record books and putting all the pieces together. But my favorite part was certainly the stories that we uncovered. My aunt had a lot of her own to share, and we certainly visited with other relatives in my hometown. And further afield, we contacted some really distant cousins and kind of got the stories from their perspective, their branch of the tree. Like any family, there are joys and sorrows, triumphs in there, tragedies, really difficult times and perseverance through hard times and overcoming of difficulties and a few scandals too. I had a great aunt who ran away with the man whose house she cleaned and was never heard from again. Or I have my grandfather had a cousin who he married a Protestant, and apparently this was quite a scandal in that day, and he was basically not spoken to again by the family, which to me there's the real scandal. But anyway, in Jesus' family is not unlike ours. We look through this list, there are certainly all those elements as well, including the scandals. We have Jacob, who starts his career deceptively stealing his brother's birthright. We have Tamar, who poses as a prostitute in order to have a child by her father-in-law, Judah. We don't really think about it or don't talk about it, but we have Judah, who visited a prostitute or thought he was visiting a prostitute. So what's going on there? But anyway, and then we also have Rahab, who was an actual prostitute. Ruth, this foreigner, or this wonderfully colorful character, of course, of King David and others in there. But I think our instinct might be to want to write out these people from the story, or at least write out the parts of the story that don't fit our image of what a holy person should be or a follower of God. But I think the scriptures here call us to see a different idea of what is holy, what is important, or maybe to see how God sees these people rather than how we might see through our human eyes. I was listening to a discussion over the weekend with Brian Stevenson, who's the founder of the Equal Justice Institute and the author of the book Just Mercy. But he speaks about in his work with death row inmates how we tend to reduce people to the crime they've committed. So rather than seeing this as a human being before you loved and created by God and all of their humanity, we tend to reduce them to a thief or a liar or a robber or a drug dealer or a murderer. And while these are certainly many of them terrible crimes, they also are not the totality of the person. And instead, these are people before us who need our love and attention and our mercy. To invite them to change and overcome, and also to recognize their own part in God's story. I think the authors of the scripture, it's exactly what they were able to do with the characters in their books, in what they write. They see beyond the scandals. They know there's more to the person than the scandal, than the lie, than the sin, than whatever they may be involved with. They were imperfect human beings, but imperfect human beings who, part of God's creation, part of God's family, Like I say, they made the list, and the God worked through them to achieve God's purpose. They all play an important part in the unfolding of God's plan, of God's family, and that family would look very different if these people weren't in there, if they didn't play that part, if they had walked out and changed. I think looking back over the long list that we have the benefit of hindsight, certainly. So we know the story doesn't end in the sin and the sorrow, and we see, the wonderfully crazily complex human beings here that make up our family, this family of God that each of us belongs to. I think during this Advent season, perhaps we are called and invited to rejoice in the knowledge that we are part of this crazy and blessed family. We can hopefully open ourselves up to the challenge of seeing others as God sees them, as much more than any sin or shortcoming or failure they may have committed, or any quality or characteristic or political affiliation which we don't care for. I think we're challenged to see ourselves as God sees us. Sometimes that is the harder thing to do, and to see beyond our own shortcomings and failures and sinful tendencies, to know of God's love for us, and to rest assured that we make the list. We're on the list, that God uses all of these things, our shortcomings included, to write His story, to write our story, to complete the family, to complete the story of the family that we all belong to, that God invites us to live in. Our joys, sorrows, triumphs, failures, successes, all have a place in this ever unfolding story of God's crazy, big, all-encompassing family. I just thank God for the gift that He gives us in the family and in those around us, our family of faith here and abroad. Thank you.
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou wisdom from on high, and order all things far and nigh. To us the path of knowledge show, and teach us in her ways to go. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O